Good afternoon. Good to be talking to you all today. And uh, I've been in the supply chain space for over 2 decades now. And like I mentioned before about LlamaSoft's credentials, but I also personally worked with a number of manufacturers, retailers, distributors across the spectrum and across a variety of industry verticals. Uh, what I was originally thinking about talking about is rethinking supply chain digitalization in the post-COVID world. But then that prompted the question about, is there a post-COVID world, or is it going to be a never normal world? Increasingly, as I think about it, I'm more convinced that it's more of a never normal world. So during today's presentation, I'll make a case as to why we are entering a never normal world. I'll propose a couple of ideas in terms of what supply chain digitalization would need to entail for future. I will also share some very real life customer examples on how they had used digital capability during the COVID-19 time and some of the challenges they faced and how they had addressed those. And then I'll make some recommendations and we'll take a few questions. Already talked about LlamaSoft, but you see a lot of logos here, select logos of number of companies that we work with across the globe. We do work with 14 of the 15 global logistics providers as well. Some stats underneath about our company if you're interested. But in the interest of time, I'll move on to the main presentation. Philip talked about the impact on supply chains briefly in his presentation. What I wanted to do is, we are all aware of the disruption that COVID is causing to supply chains across the globe, but I want to put that in perspective with some numbers here. In a recent McKinsey survey, 73% of the supply chain executives who responded said they encountered problems in their supplier base, and 75% faced problems with production and distribution. Now, when I look at these numbers for consumer packaged goods or food and beverage, the numbers are as high as very close to 100%. Then the second fact is world merchandise trade suffered a historic year-on-year fall, 27% in Q2. A lot of that is driven by lockdowns, but also port shutdowns and the impact it had on the ocean transportation. The third fact is, this is again a US-centric metric within US supermarkets. Philip talked about SKU count growth. What we had seen in 2020 is actually shrinkage in terms of the number of SKUs that are sold at US supermarkets. On average, they were down by 8.7%. A lot of that is triggered by retailers asking the question saying, why do I need 30 different types of toilet paper to serve my consumer? Right? And consumer packaged goods are also rethinking their entire assortment strategy. In my conversations with retailers and brand owners in European markets as well, the trends are very similar. There is a desire to take a hard look at the assortment and see how to rationalize that. Consumer spending on Amazon is up 60%. All you need to do is take a walk around and see how many at-home deliveries are showing up at your neighbor's doorsteps and your own doorsteps as well. And that speaks to the fact that the last mile delivery density is intensifying. But why did I say it's a world of never normal? Because I don't view COVID-19, the magnitude of that is humongous, no taking away from that, but I don't view that as an isolated disruption. There are disruptions, whether they're technologically driven or there are disruptions that are driven by geopolitical or weather-related events. These so-called black swan events have been occurring and occurring at increasing frequency. If I were to zoom in on just from January 2019 onwards, look at a number of disruptions that had taken place. More recently, it was the trade wars and the Brexit and a number of other factors pre-COVID that were as such forcing supply chain professionals to rethink about the role of digital in managing their supply chains. However, 85% of the organizations that were surveyed by McKinsey struggled with inefficient digital technologies. They had to resort to Excel spreadsheets. Now, do you call Excel digital? I agree, Excel is digital, but is that digital transformation? The short answer is no. And so how should organizations think about it? Now, let me take a step back from COVID-19, right? Even in pre-COVID, a lot of companies that I personally worked with and number of companies across the globe are on their journey to sales and operations planning or integrated business planning as a means of transformation. However, this is a survey that was done by Supply Chain Insights. In 2016, 65% of the respondents said that their S&OP process is effective or extremely effective. That number went down in May 2019. Mind you, this is pre-COVID, down to 35%, because the existing planning processes and S&OP processes are starting to be challenged in light of disruptions that are happening at increasing frequency, like I said before. This is a survey a benchmarking survey that Lamasoft has done in collaboration with RSR Research across a number of retail supply chain executives on the transformative power that artificial intelligence has on supply chain transformation. What this survey indicates is the green bars that you see are winners as categorized by their performance, relative performance to their peer group in the industry, and others are the ones that are lagging behind the winners. As you can see, winners are seeing a lot more potential with algorithmically driven decisions across a spectrum of supply chain problems as compared to the others who are lagging behind the winners. So this has been our experience based on our own independent research that we have done with RSR. These responses, while are in the retailer context, I can take several of these points and make very similar arguments, whether you're a manufacturer, regardless of whether you're CPG, food and beverage, discrete manufacturing, or pharmaceuticals, etc. Now, what does this tell us? It's all about speed, right? Speed to value, speed to deploy. Organizations no longer have this appetite for a multi-year deployment to wait for a payout from the deployment 2 years down the road. Digital transformations need to be delivered at speed and at scale. Not only that, the speed to answer is becoming increasingly critical from a business user and a senior executive perspective as well. And the speed to evolve as your business models change, as your operating model changes, how quickly can your technology evolve and scale? And existing approaches simply don't deliver speed at scale, whether these are supply chain planning systems, data lake and BI initiatives, throwing a team of data scientists at the problem, Excel-based planning. These don't scale as fast as you want to evolve your enterprise. Is there a better way? Do we need to rip and replace all these technology investments that we had done over the years and decades? The short answer is no. If you look at this chart right here, I'm borrowing some of the Gartner terminology here. When I say systems of record, I'm talking about the ERP foundation and the execution systems that help track transactions and help execute on transactions. In the middle layer are the planning and S&OP systems. These are, think of them as the demand planning, supply planning, inventory planning, etc. Those type of systems. And at the top of the funnel, you see the system of innovation is what I'm referring to as a new way of thinking. So organizations have invested a lot in ERP and the S&OP landscape. What we need to do is to make sure that these systems are getting smarter and they are able to get faster and be able to deliver results at scale and speed. That is where comes the system of innovation. Think of system of innovation as a layer on top of these disparate systems that are sitting underneath, but be able to abstract out the information, provide end-to-end visibility to the supply chain, and be able to enable algorithms to not only be able to visualize supply chain, but be able to make forward-looking predictions. So bringing in predictive power into decisions. So So capabilities enabled by these type of systems are end-to-end network design, optimizing policies that guide and govern planning systems, simulation and probabilistic models to deal with the stochastic nature of the world we live in. Last but not the least, risk and resiliency. That's getting top of mind for a lot of companies right now. What does this system of innovation enable? It enables a supply chain digital twin. So think of that as an end-to-end digital model of your supply chain, wherein you're able to visualize the information across your supply chain, across the nodes of your supply chain at any point in time, and be able to spot any risks and make sure that your supply chain is resilient and be able to respond to those risks. So supply chain digital twin is what is enabled by this system of innovation. Again, a lot of the data could come from the planning and execution systems underneath. So let's not throw away the baby with the bathwater, but make sure that there is this end-to-end visibility that is getting enabled. I'm going to walk you through 3 different examples of these digital twins in action. The first one is a life sciences company example, but the challenges faced by this company can be translated across industry verticals. And the second one is a packaged foods company example. And the third one is an apparel company example. And all 3 examples are most recent from the COVID time. So I will tell you the story behind and the challenges faced by these companies and what kind of solution approach that these companies have taken. First example of life sciences company. This happens to be a medical devices company. They do have multiple business segments, and one of the segments deals with respiratory care equipment. Another segment deals with cardiovascular care equipment. What happened was when COVID hit, as the rates of hospitalizations have spiked and the COVID cases were ramping up, what happened was the elective surgeries that can be postponed, the hospitals and patients alike started postponing those elective surgeries. Because of that, what happened was their product portfolio mix has radically got skewed more towards the respiratory care equipment. The demand has spiked, and the elective surgery equipment, the demand has gone down. Now the company had multiple options, right? One is, do I cut down on the production capacity for my elective surgery equipment, and by how much? This company has been air shipping a lot of product. Can I put product on the ocean because there is not as much demand for certain parts of the portfolio? Can I turn some ships as warehouses on the ocean? And at the same time, the air transportation capacity started choking up and the rates for air transportation started escalating. Then the third challenge is the pressure on distribution centers was building up as the inventory started piling up. Do I need to source secondary distribution centers? Each of these decisions can be made in isolation, but if you think about it, the manufacturing, the transportation, the inventory, and the distribution decisions are connected in nature. Fortunately for this company, they've been on this journey of this supply chain digital twin. So they were able to very quickly evaluate connected trade-offs between these different functions and be able to drive to decisions that are optimized from a total cost to serve perspective, as opposed to just optimizing production cost or distribution cost or inventory cost in isolation. And they were able to unlock tens of $millions in savings. The second example I want to walk through is a consumer packaged goods company, actually a food manufacturing company. In this case, what they were faced with was a multi-pronged challenge. The demand at the store level started spiking up significantly as panic buying started, right? And at the same time that there was raw material shortage, they had aluminum, foils that they use, and there was shortage of that. They also had some capacity taken offline because of crew quarantines, because of COVID-19 cases, and they had to shut down facilities and subject them to deep cleaning, whether they're in manufacturing or distribution. So the capacity became a very radically, dynamically changing picture. And what they were able to do is they were struggling with a lot of Excel spreadsheets to evaluate all the trade-offs to maximize their profit, right? Now, I know that there is demand downstream. I have a capacity constraint and raw material constraint. What is the how do I maximize my profit to do that, I had to strike a certain product mix in terms of my production. So that's the type of decision they were making. And using the digital twin technology, they were able to roll out apps, micro apps that are written with no code and deployed to business users, not just visibility to production, but to sourcing as well because of raw material constraints and downstream distribution. In a connected manner, they were able to make the most optimal decisions in terms of what mix to produce during the COVID-19 times. And they continue to use the capability as the demand picture shifts radically. On the supply side, things have stabilized since. The third example is a very large American apparel retailer. Apparel, and they have a few other departments as well. And they have about 100,000 SKUs. When COVID hit, what happened was a lot of their brick and mortar stores started getting shut down. And they, on the other hand, because of the long lead times of procurement, there was inventory that was already en route from Far East Asia of the goods that they purchased, of the merchandise they purchased. So that inventory was not stopping. It was starting to hit the US ports. What they had to do was, on a very quick turnaround, they had to start rethinking the entire product flow. As the shipments started hitting the ports, they had to decide on how much inventory needs to be rerouted to online channel, because the online demand, e-commerce demand started spiking up during this time. So what they were able to do is to very quickly stand up some applications on the technology foundation that we worked with them on, and be able to roll out these apps very quickly to make sure that they're maximizing the potential for the e-commerce demand. Also, where appropriate, leverage stores that are shut down as distribution centers, and also make sure that they're stocking to the right levels in their e-commerce fulfillment centers as well. And these pivots they had to do very, very quickly, and they were able to do that quickly using the digital twin technology. So those are three examples, but I also want to leave you away with few takeaways based on what everything I talked about for the never normal world. Decisions need to be interconnected. They need to be outside in as opposed to inside out. I still see a lot of companies doing their planning based on very inside out thinking, saying that this is the data I have in my ERP systems. This is the data that I'm using to drive my decisions. Unfortunately, the action is shifting more and more outside the four walls of the enterprise. So these decisions, as part of your digital transformation, start thinking about your planning processes and decision processes as outside in as opposed to inside out. The second point I want to make is AI is entering mainstream, right? Or has already entered mainstream. The three examples I walked through, they take advantage of artificial intelligence in some shape or form, the algorithmic intelligence in some shape or form. These are all mainstream customers driving mainstream day-to-day decisions that they have to drive. However, incorporating AI into your digital transformation doesn't mean that it has to be a rip and replace, a massive rip and replace project or a multi-year project. This can be turned around very, very quickly. The third point I want you to take away is there is an opportunity to deliver some self-service capabilities to business as part of the digital transformation. The emerging platforms are allowing for somebody, without having to write a piece of code, be able to use visual widgets and drag and drop widgets to cobble together workflows, to cobble together intelligence. The platforms, supply chain platforms are evolving to that level. What that does is it takes some of the burden away from the IT resources and the data science teams, and have the business community, the powered users in the business community, to be able to build apps leveraging these platforms at an enterprise grade scale and deploy them at speed. Digital transformation can happen in bite sizes. So don't equate digital transformation project to a multi-year implementation to see a payoff. Yes, a digital transformation can have a transformation roadmap that can be across a couple of years. That is not unusual, but you can deliver the transformation bite sizes. The value unlock can start happening in a matter of weeks as opposed to months and years. That has been our experience. Last but not the least, disruptions are here to stay. Let's accept that as the reality. We have entered the never normal world. So I think those who can embrace change at a personal level as well as at a professional level and be able to view change as an opportunity, disruption as an opportunity, are they here not only to survive but to thrive in the world of never normal.